Hello everyone, Christina Werner here. Welcome to day 23 of the holiday card series for 2023. The two cards that are shown in this video were actually created for the Simon Says Stamp YouTube channel. So big thanks to Simon for allowing me to share these in my holiday card series as well. Today I'm going to be sharing with you two cards made with supplies in the January 2024 card kit. So the first thing I'm using is the stamp set called Don't Flurry, Be Happy. And for the first card, I'm going to be focusing on that large circular snowflake background stamp. So I'm removing it from the sheet of stamps and then I'm placing it into my MISTI stamp positioning tool. I'm prepping my cardstock with an anti-static powder tool since I will be doing some heat embossing. And then I'm using the clear embossing and watermark ink pad that's included in the kit. Now, I have an older one of these. I'm so excited to get a brand new juicy pad, and it works extremely well for embossing. So I'm stamping that down, and then I'm going to coat my stamped image with a clear embossing powder. This is the color Icicle from Brutus Monroe. I'm going to tap off the excess and then use my heat tool to melt the embossing powder. After it was melted, I decided to do a little bit of ink resist and take the Twilight ink with a blending brush and just apply it to my cardstock. And the resist comes in right here when you see my embossed design resisting that blue ink. So as I apply this ink right on top, it's going to protect the white cardstock underneath and preserve those snowflake images. So after I applied all of my ink, I then grabbed a clean paper towel. You could also use a rag, and I just wiped off any of that ink that might have been sitting on top of that slick embossing powder. And that just cleans up any of that ink and really brightens up those white lines. For my card base, I have a pre-cut and scored and folded card base. It's an A2 size card, and I'm placing it onto a sticky mat inside my MISTI, and that's so that I can stamp off 3 edges of my card front while I stamp with this huge stamp. So this is a really, really big background stamp with all those snowflakes, and it's going to kind of bleed off both sides and also the bottom of the card front. So that's why I wanted to have my card in the middle of my MISTI and not right up against one of the edges or corners. Okay, so the color I'm using to stamp all of these snowflakes is the color Morning. It's a very pale blue. Morning, Twilight, and I believe Galaxy all come together kind of as a trio. They're meant to be used together. So I'm using the 2 lighter shades of ink for this card, for these 2 elements that I've got going here. And I think the colors look beautiful together. I did stamp this twice so I could get a really solid impression. And then as this ink kind of dries back after it's been sitting for a bit, it does soften just a tiny bit and really smooths out. In the kit, you have a sheet of this pale purple cardstock. It's the color Lavender, and it's really, really pretty. It goes well with all of the snowflake images. I'm using the color Morning and stamping one of the greetings in the stamp set. Now, the greetings in the stamp set are split greetings, so you can have different beginnings and endings to each kind of phrase. So for this first card, I thought it would be really fun to have it say "Snow Much Thanks." Kind of a pun and a fun way to say thank you. So the thanks, I'm actually going to stamp in that darker color, which was Twilight. And it's going to kind of sit on top of that larger all capital letter greeting as well. It's going to overlap that a little bit. And I stamped each one of these multiple times just to get really, really solid color. So now I'm going to do a bunch of die cutting using the Nested Circles die set from Simon. So one of these larger circles I'm using to cut out that circular background pattern. And then I'm going to use a smaller circle to cut out my greeting area. The plan is to have the smaller die cut circle be nested right inside of that larger circle. I put some foam adhesive on the back of the dark blue snowflake circle, put that right down into the center of my card, and then I placed my Snow Much Thanks greeting right over the top in the center. To emphasize that snow much all caps greeting, I took a white gel pen and I added some white lines to the right side of the letters, creating almost like a shadow or a highlight. This is really going to emphasize those words. You could get a similar look by stamping the greeting in a white pigment ink, letting that dry, and then stamping over top with it slightly offset. But I decided to just add that with a white gel pen. So here is the first card. Came together really, really easily and quick. And you could definitely change up the colors on this for a different look. For my second card, I'm going to change up the card size, and I'm now using a 5x7 piece of cardstock. I believe this is from Hero Arts. I'll have the color listed down below in the supplies, but I really love this kind of deep raspberry shade. I thought it would go really well with like the cool tones of the blue and purple. So I'm using that really, really large background stamp again. And I wanted to show you something that's really neat about the arrangement of these snowflakes on this really large background image. Before I get to that, I just want to let you know that I did use an anti-static powder tool on my cardstock, and I used a lot of it. I'm not afraid of putting lots of anti-static powder down because it's super easy to clean it all up with a microfiber cloth later on. And you'll see that when I'm finished here. So I used that same clear ink and I stamped that down right at the bottom of my card front. Pressed down with my fingertips to get a really good impression. I'm going to remove this from my sticky mat. And once again, I used a sticky mat so I could stamp off all of those edges. And then I'm applying some clear embossing powder. Now this is the color Icicle from Brutus Monroe. And it's just going to kind of darken the color and give it a watermark look. So I used my heat tool just to heat set this and looked beautiful. I put it back into my MISTI, and now this is the really cool thing about this really large background stamp. You can position it right over the top and it's a continuous pattern. So when I was designing the stamp set, I wanted to be able to have this pattern extend all the way across a 5x7 card base. So in order to do that, I made sure that the bottom and top edges, and I believe also the sides, would kind of match up so that you could have a repeating pattern on your card. So in order to protect everything that I had already stamped, I did use one of the placement guides, the clear placement guides, and that just puts a piece of plastic right over top of what I've already stamped and embossed. Because I didn't clean off my stamp, I was going to continue stamping with that clear embossing ink, so I didn't want to clean it off yet. But I also knew that in order to get it positioned just right on my card design, I would need to have the card underneath protected. Otherwise, some of that residual ink could transfer to the card before I was ready for it. So I did use that placement guide, and then I stamped the snowflake pattern 2 times for a total of 3 to continue this pattern all the way across my 5x7 card base. And this clear embossing pattern looks beautiful on top of this cardstock. I used a microfiber cloth. This one is from Pink & Main, but Simon Says Stamp sells some cloths. You could even just use one from your kitchen. It's the kind of attracting nature of the microfiber cloth, how it kind of attracts dust and things like that. It really picks up all that powder. I think it just looks so beautiful glistening like that. So I'm going to use the remainder of my lavender cardstock that I used before when I cut out my greeting, and I'm stamping the start of this greeting first in taffy ink, and then I'm going to kind of tone it down with a little bit of Twilight. And this is going to give me much more of a violet red shade as opposed to if I was just to stamp with Twilight on its own. Then I used Twilight on its own and I stamped the Snow Much greeting right below. So this one says, "Miss you, Snow Much." So you kind of get an idea of how you can change the pairing of greetings to change the greeting. All right, so I've used my Tombow Extreme Adhesive on the back of my snowflake pattern, and I'm adhering this to a pre-cut and folded 5x7 card base. I then trimmed down that greeting area, put some foam adhesive on the back, and then I used a T-square ruler to help me get this aligned perfectly straight as I adhere it to my card. So in the card kit, you actually get a set of 3 snowflake dies. It is called the Harmony Snowflakes, kind of a large, medium, and small. So I die cut all of them 3 times and then glued them together, layered them up, stacked them up to make them a little bit more substantial. These snowflakes are so delicate and have such little lines that stacking them up like this really makes them look a little bit more substantial. And that's really what I wanted them to look like on my card. So I used some glue. I'm just using Honeybee Precision Glue for this. Put a few little dabs of glue on each snowflake and then put another snowflake on top for a total of 3 layers for each of these snowflakes. So after I had them adhered and kind of wiggled them around, made sure they were lined up just right, I then moved to adhering the snowflakes to my card. I just put the big one right nestled up right next to that greeting and then put the other 2 kind of around that area. Also in the kit, you get these enamel drops. They are clear, iridescent, and kind of like a cloud, kind of translucent kind of drops. I'm using the iridescent drops for this, and I put the drops on each center of the snowflakes and then just a few sort of scattered around that main greeting area. So here is that finished card, the second one. I love the gloss on that embossed snowflake background. I think it sparkles and almost gives it a little bit of a shimmer. And then here is that first card that I had completed earlier. I think they're so much fun, and they were really kind of a great way to use all of the contents in the January 2024 card kit. Just a reminder that all of the supplies I've used are listed down below in the video description. And thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you guys in another video very soon.